By the slip-up of a divine god, a young fellow named Kelvin bites the dust, and the goddess of reincarnation gives him a chance to be resurrected into another world with abilities he picks himself, in return for all his memories aside from his name taken. Awaking in the new world, he has no memory of his past, and a game-like menu appears in front of him. He presses the start button, a voice comes out of it, telling him he was chosen to reincarnate in the fantasy world, and has no memory of it, because he exchanges them to a skill called Summoner Mage. He starts his journey and asks the voice who really she is. Voice reveals she is the goddess of reincarnation, Melfina, who he asked to serve him. They arrive in a town called Perth. Kevin visits the Adventure Guild to register himself as an adventurer. Before registration, Melfina warns him not to mention his summoner class, explaining summoners are so rare and powerful, kings and nations would start wars to acquire him, so he writes Green Mage instead. He gets his F-rank adventure card and asks the receptionist to suggest him some jobs. Melfina also advises him to take the blue slime request and tame one of them, then he takes the job. He goes to the forest to slay blue slime, but the weak-looking slime is not weak as it looks. Kelvin attacked and failed to defeat it. After many of his failed attempts, he finally manages to defeat the one slime. Kelvin successfully tamed that slime and named it Clotho. He summons Clotho, and now Clotho has its own distinct personality. After that, Clotho and Kelvin join forces and completes the quest by eliminating the rest of the slime. He gains from Melfina that is summoner class rank S, the highest possible, making him the most powerful living summoner. Getting back to Parth, he comes across a slave trader, and is disturbed to find slavery is common in this world. However, makes an effort not to consider it, and on second thought, leases an inn called Spirit's Song for the evening. Weeks later, Kelvin is quickly promoted to E-rank, making others adventurer to doubts him. D-rank adventurer Cashel, who looks to embarrass Kelvin, asks him to join his party, saying they are going to hunt down the monster called a Black Ghost Knight. Seeing everyone worried, Kelvin decline his offer and use appraisal skill on Cashel. Kelvin sees that Cashel is named as a killer, so rather than going along with him, he proposes a challenge, Kelvin against Cashel's whole party. Then Cashel meets his criminal party members, Gimel and Raj, who plot to murder Kelvin during the quest. At the time of the quest, Kelvin reaches the location before Cashel's party arrives and defeats all the monster. Kelvin reveals that he already knows their plan and provokes Raj to attack him. As Kelvin captured Raj with his magic, another member Gimel run away. Kelvin summons Clotho, who has now developed into a slime Gluttonia, an almost demon lord class monster that captures Gimel. Cashel is easily beaten up by Kelvin, and admits to hunting low-position adventurer for the experience. Kelvin finds the Black Ghost Knight, and impressed by his stats, immediately asks him to make contract with him. Black Ghost Knight already has a personality and a name Gerard. Gerard can make sense if he was once a human knight, yet turned into a monster after he died. To check Kelvin's strength, Gerard agrees to fight Kelvin. In the mid of their duel, Gerard suddenly recalls the realm he once served. Alcarl was obliterated by a mythical person named Gildora, when Alcarl wouldn't assist the Lysia domain, with annihilating the blessed domain of Daramus. This likewise caused the demise of Gerard's better half and girl, Betty and Connie, the aggravation of which kept him attached to the world after he died. With the help of Clotho, Kelvin manages to overpower Gerard. The following day, Kelvin supplies a piece of Gerard's armor as evidence he finished the task, and joined with Cashel's bounty is elevated straightforwardly to B rank. Gerard joins Clotho and Melfina as Kelvin's most current monsters. Kelvin meets an old man who reveals to be Perth's guild master Leo, who inquires as to whether Kelvin came from a different universe, showing that his appraisal skill is more powerful than Kelvin's concealment skill, so he can see he is a summoner. Kelvin agrees and asks Leo why he had not stopped Cashel if he has that skill. Leo concedes he realized Cashel was a killer. However, as Cashel was a foreign noble, he needed proof, so he is grateful to Kelvin. He also reveals other people were summoned as the current heroes of the Daramus Empire to face a demon lord, as the monster becomes more powerful due to the demon king's influence, so he wants Kelvin to protect the town, while heroes focus on the demon king. Kelvin agrees to his request. Later Kelvin asks Melfina about the heroes, and she explains she was the one who summoned them into this world when Daramus Empire performed the ritual. Kelvin decides to buy a female slave to train and add her to his group. He searches out the slave he saw on his first day, a beautiful half-elf named Ethel. Ethel so far has not been sold due to being under a curse that burns the individuals who contact her. He asks Melfina how to remove her curse and leave without buying. A few moments later Kelvin returns, and despite knowing her curse, he buys Ethel. He asks her to join his party and breaks her curse, allowing her to touch people for the first time. Getting back to his lodgings, he hands over Ethel to under the wing of Claire, his landlady, who takes her to bath. While Kelvin waits, Ethel returns in a maid outfit, and he is stunned to see how beautiful she is. Then he compliments her, making Ethel blush. Afterward, they enjoy dinner. Then he introduced her to others. He reveals his secret and asks her not to tell anyone. He shows her how to use skill points. He is unable to sleep that night as he is forced to share his bed with Ethel. A month passes since Ethel joined his group, and now Ethel becomes a deadly archer and gains an affinity for fire due to her previous curse. Ethel also becomes close friends with Angie, a guild secretary who invites them to join her in a newly opened sweet shop. Later Kelvin meets with Angie and Ethel is late, but when she comes he is again surprised to see her in casual dress. While they are enjoying sweets, Tabora, the third prince of Trison, arrogantly confronts and disturbs their moments. He attempts to snatch Angie and Ethel, so Kelvin beats up his guards. When Kelvin uses his magic on Tabora, he concedes he came to Parth to recruit a supposed solid adventurer to boost his poor reputation in Trison, but Kelvin reveals he is the adventurer and refuses Tabora's offer. Meanwhile, Melfina visits the Cathedral of Daramus to bestow a prescience on Prophet Colette. She asks Colette about the heroes' progress and orders her to send the heroes to manage a danger in the west and avoid Parth. Later that night, Ethel tells Kelvin she has fallen head over heels for him. However, Kelvin resists his desire as she is still a slave, and he feels he would be taking advantage. The next morning, Melfina returns and informs Kelvin the four heroes are more vulnerable than she was expecting, as Kelvin has nearly outperformed them. Leo calls Kelvin, telling him they found demons inside the cave, and asks to deal with a demon sealed in a cave in exchange to hide the fact that he beat Tabora. Kelvin happily accepts the job. Upon arriving at the location, Kelvin finds two evil presences. As they enter the room there are two demons, the Archdemon Victor, guarding a demon girl named Sarah, daughter to the most recently defeated demon Lord Gustav. Victor hopes by eating Kelvin, he will acquire the human capacity to break the seal, keeping Sarah caught. He will then eat Sarah and become the next demon lord himself. Kelvin begins smiling, and Melfina and Gerard reveal to Ethel Kelvin has a bad habit, he is a total battle junkie. Victor creates a smoke screen and attacks the party through the underground. However, Kelvin detects his presence and blocks his attack. Then Victor is weakened by Clotho draining his magic, and his arms are destroyed by Ethel's arrows and Gerard's sword. Refused to give up, Victor assumes his full demonic form and launches his attacks again. However, against their combined teamwork, he is still defeated. A stone pillar nearly falls on Sarah until Victor saves her. Victor admits his defeats, and Kelvin asks him if he was never gonna eat Sarah in the first place. He agrees and explains to him that once he trained and took care of Sarah when she was youthful, and was relegated to watch her by her dad Gustav. Before he was crushed by the hero, Gustav cast a spell on Sarah fixing her away, so just a human could unlock her, and Victor has guarded her ever since. As his dying request, Victor requests that Kelvin add Sarah to his party so she can at long last see the world. Kelvin agrees and Victor passes on calmly. Despite the risk she will become the next Demon King, Kelvin frees Sarah. The party come from a cave. He hides Sarah's demon trait with the hairband and tell other that Sarah was possessed by the demon. Gerard evolves into an abyssal knight commander. They return to the town and Sarah is much delighted to see the town first time. Kelvin reports to Leo and is promoted to rank A for overcoming Victor. Angie organizes a celebration on Kelvin's promotion. After everybody passes out drunk, Kelvin finds Sarah grieving for Victor, who was her main youth companion. She decides to experience the whole world in Victor's memory, specifically, to see the sea and learn to swim like Victor once promised her. As Sarah joins his party, Kelvin makes her armor called Arondite from Victor's armor, and also a new sword, Dainsleaf, for Gerard, but keeps secrets about his and Ethel's new weapon. Kelvin fell asleep and has a sudden powerful hunger for rice. Kelvin and his party head towards the water kingdom of Tourage, and its capital coastal city, where rice can be found, and also fulfill the Sarah's wish that she can swim in the ocean. Melfina disappears again, claiming she desires to have one of her avatars lastly show up in the actual world. Gerard privately suspects Melfina is jealous Kelvin has two other ladies in his party. On the journey, they are attacked by the bandit gang Blackwind, who wants Sarah and Ethel for the slave exchange. Sarah comes out from the carriage and effortlessly beats them up. After that, Kelvin and Sarah interrogates them to know about their leader and location. They arrive in the capital city of the water country Tourage, which looks similar to old Japan. Kelvin informs Tourage guild leader Mist that the Blackwind's secret leader is an adventurer from Trison named Kristoff, who is subtly engaged with the unlawful slave exchange. Mist informs Kristoff once destroyed the Blackwind and now becomes the leader of the group, but for political reasons they cannot accuse Kristoff publicly. Kelvin senses the presence of a hero and tells Mist to ask for help from the hero. Kelvin's party reached the Blackwind's hideouts before the heroes and freed all the slaves. Then they locate Blackwind's leader Kristoff and easily defeat him and his lieutenants. The heroes eventually catch up and find Clotho, who is guarding the people. As they reveal that they are heroes, people request them to help the adventurers party that helped them. The heroes find Kelvin, but believe Kristoff is another adventurer sent to free the slaves and view Kelvin and his group imagining as the genuine heads of Blackwinds. Kelvin at long last meets the heroes, sword wielders Tuia and Setsuna, and mages Nana and Miyabi. Kelvin provokes them to a battle against him, with the losing side having to obey one order from the winner. Hero accepts his challenge. Starting the duel, Kelvin uncovers his new equipment, Skill Eater. Kelvin uses that equipment on the magic user Miyabi. His equipment is basically a pair of gloves that absorb other people's unique skills and allow Kelvin to use them. Kelvin copied Miyabi's parallel processing, and seems Sarah also lent him one of her skill. Tuia charges alone and attacks Kelvin with his sword. Kelvin blocked his attacks with the martial art skill that he borrowed from Sarah. Setsuna interferes their duel and helps Tuia to get away from Kelvin. However, Tuia got injured while protecting Setsuna from Kelvin's attack. Thus he decides to battle all alone, accepting it as his work on the off chance that he is to overcome the Demon King one day, until Setsuna slaps him for risking himself and ignoring his teammates, and reminds him that they all are heroes and came from the same world. Tuia apologizes and they battle as a group once more. This time they got Kelvin for a moment with their combined attack, until he uses his explosion magic. Kelvin thoroughly criticizes their amateur approach and gives them hints on the most proficient method to move along. By applying Kelvin's tips to their attacks, the heroes charge again and succeed in trapping him in an anti-magic trap. Kelvin summons golems to buy time for himself until he completely ready for his next attack. Kelvin uses Miyabi's parallel processing to invent a brand new spell and frees himself. Then he defeats all the 4 heroes one by one. Afterward, when the heroes awaken, Kelvin explains he is the person who saved the slaves and Christoph is the genuine crook. The heroes realize Kelvin only fought them to measure their abilities and help them improve. Kelvin as the winner demands them to strip their clothes. Getting back to the Tourage, Kelvin leaves all the slaves in guild hands and changes the heroes into swim clothes and takes them to an ocean cavern to train against a giant octopus. After some struggle, heroes manage to defeat the octopus. Kelvin notes they nearly lost to the octopus, so they have zero chance against the dungeon boss, and the Demon King would kill them without effort. Sarah locates a dungeon boss. Toya replies to Kelvin that he will run away and train until become strong. Impressed with their resolve, Kelvin gives them a break and defeats the dragon himself. After that, heroes leave, so Kelvin gives them pendants he enchanted himself. Kelvin is summoned by the Queen of Tourage, and her castle looks like Japan's architecture. As the queen states her name Tsubaki Fujiwara, Kelvin realizes from her family name that one of her ancestors must have been Japanese. She expresses gratitude toward him for overcoming the Black Wind and the dragon, and asks him for a reward, but is shocked when Kelvin demands just rice, so she compensates him with a lifetime supply. She even arranges a banquet for them where they can eat and drink Japanese cuisine. They all enjoyed the feast, and Ethel also learned Japanese-style cooking. Several days later, Tsubaki attempts to hire Kelvin to work for Tourage, and even asks him to become her personal guard, but he rejects the offer. The queen opened the teleportation gate, the fastest way to send Kelvin and his party to Perth. After returning to Perth, Kelvin decides to buy a house and bought a huge mansion, and also hires 2 of the slaves he liberated from Blackwind, Ellie and her girl Luca, as family workers. That night, Melfina returns with her avatar body, and Kelvin can summon her into the actual world first time. The next morning, over breakfast, Melfina again formally introduces herself to everyone. After that, she rewards Kelvin with her Grace of Resurrection, which has 2 effects. First, it can save him from any deadly assault 1 time per month, and second, it permits him to call a hero. However, this can only be used once in his lifetime. This stresses Kelvin, as it would mean forcing someone to come to this world against their will. Later, he shares his concerns with Melfina, who explains that Demon King all has the ability Papillas, which causes craziness, and makes them immune to all harm. Accordingly, the ones in particular who can kill them have summoned heroes. Since they come from different universes, their magic is fundamentally different. He still feels guilty, so she explains there are 2 types of summoning. One is teleporting people, and the other is reincarnating the dead people's soul into the body. Although it's not suited to summon multiple people, but it can summon a powerful being like him. Feeling better, Kelvin decides to reincarnate a hero immediately. He tells Melfina to use all his points to summon a most powerful hero. Casting a summoning spell, he summons a little girl named Rion. She thanks Kelvin to reincarnate her into this world, and then both of them collapse due to exhaustion. It seems that before the reincarnation, Rion had terminally ill in Japan. Rion is now happy to have a strong and healthy body, and is able to walk on her legs again. Kelvin tells he also came from another world, but has no memory though. To repay Kelvin, Rion asks him to let her join his party. As she also has dark hair, he decides Rion should pose as his younger half-sister. Rion also decides to change her name to Rion. At night, Kelvin awakens and finds Sarah, Melfina and Rion have all slipped into his bed. The next day, Kelvin takes all his party members into the jungle, and he decides for their own safety Rion, Ellie and Luca should level up, so with his XP sharing ability, he increases their levels without them battling. Ethel senses the Shadow Wolf's presence, so Kelvin defeats the wolf, and after taming him, give him to Rion. Old, another adventurer, arrives and joins them in a dungeon with his party, who are killing beasts for their promotion exam to rank B. His party members are jealous of Kelvin after seeing only cute girls in his party and run away. Clotho, Sarah and Gerard return to everyone. Ethel uses her far-seeing and finds Sarah and Gerard already slew all the monsters. Later, it leads Kelvin to apologize to Old. Kelvin and Rion give a bath to Shadow Wolf, and Rion named him Alex. Then Rion continues her training for more than half a month, until she is a capable fighter. One night, 14 assassins enter Kelvin's properties, and Kelvin lets Rion and Alex battle them as a test. The assassins, previous partners of Christoph, seek revenge against Kelvin, however, are completely crushed by Rion, while Kelvin catches their leader. Somewhere else, the Emperor of Tryson called a meeting and is disheartened at Kristoff's disappointment, as his exposure is a worldwide shame to Tryson, and now others considering forming an alliance against them. General Tristan pushed a war plan against other nations, and Prince Asgard voted for that. However, General Dan and Princess Shatola voted against that. The tie-break vote is left to General Clive, who is missing because of reveling his libertine hunger. Kelvin and his party head towards Elf Village inside the jungle, as Leo informed him Tryson has been increasing aggression against Gon Kingdom. Incidentally, he sends Kelvin on his rank S promotion exam to get done with a task for Leonhart Gon, Beast King of Gon, by killing a rank S beast to save an elven village. They meet village chief Nelraz, who mistakes Ethel for Lumel. Nelraz then realizes his mistake and apologies. However, Kelvin is curious and asks him about Lumel. Nelraz explains it was 20 years ago Lumel offered herself as a sacrifice to save the village from a dragon who took her as his wife, but years later, Lumel was found dead, and fearing the dragon's return, the elves fled to Gon. Kelvin suspects Lumel was Ethel's mom, though her human father remains unknown, as Nelraz uncovers the beast has been kidnapping elves. So Kelvin asks permission to renovate the village. At night, Tryson's soldier attack with beast controlled with a slave collar, however, are killed by Ethel using extremely long-range archery magic. From the watchtower Kelvin creates with his magic. Meanwhile, Melfina and Rion locate the commander of the group. Their leader evades catching by controlling the rank S monster, a gigant lord. Melfina lets Rion fight with the giant monster. Rion charges and failed to land her first attack. She then attacks again, and along with Alex, she defeats the monster. The Gigant Lord transforms into a flaming Gigant Furnace. Rion defeats it again anyway, and captures the commander. General Clive shows up and nearly kills Ethel, who is saved by Kelvin. Kelvin acknowledges Clive is strong and feels his battle junkie senses rising. Clive attempts to hypnotize Ethel into turning into his slave, however, Kelvin protects her. Kelvin warns him not to lay his hand on his woman. He uses appraisal skill, and finds Clive is also a reincarnation with a unique hypnosis skill. Kelvin attack with his lances, but all his attack reflected by Clive barrier magic. Kelvin discovers that Clive is using his hypnosis skill on his party members, and doesn't care about the people of this world. Clive brags his hypnosis allows him to do anything he desires to anyone for his own entertainment. Angered by Clive's arrogance, Kelvin attacks and manages to scar his face. Now pissed off, Clive casts his strongest S-rank spell, and creates a hurricane. It forces Kelvin to use his most powerful magic staff, the rank S Black Disaster. Kelvin attacks and slices through Clive's spell, and cuts off both Clive's legs as well. Before Kelvin finishes him off, Clive is rescued by General Tristan, who teleports them both away. Ethel informs the villager, and the elves celebrates their victory with the feast. However, Kelvin is disappointed the fight was a draw, and decides to become strong enough that no one can beat him. Nelraz gives Ethel a hair ornament that belonged to Lumel. Kelvin put it on her hair. Somewhere else, Tristan has Clive detained and puts his own slaves accountable for tormenting him for trial and error, to see if reincarnations have any scientific value. In the end, a young elf girl thanks Kelvin, who revealed to be Beast King Leonhard in disguise of a young girl, and, having seen everything, confirms Kelvin is now promoted to S rank. He further reveals there will be an official promotion ceremony that will incorporate a mock battle against existing S-rank adventurers. Everybody is exasperated when battling other S-rank champions. Lights Kelvin's battle junkie instincts again. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, comment, share the video and subscribe to the channel.